Hello and welcome to another episode of Building the Premier Accounting Firm. I'm your host, Roger Connect, president of Universal Accounting Center, and it's my pleasure to have on this show each and every week the experts, the individuals that are specialists in their various rights to help us work on our businesses, offer quality accounting services, and ultimately get paid what we're worth. As it relates to accounting services, one of the things that I want to specialize in are those things that matter most as we're running our business. So in this podcast, we'll focus on things related to marketing, selling, pricing, tech stacks, training staff, onboarding clients, retaining clients, mental health, and so many other things. And this is going to be a great episode that contribute to that pool of knowledge. Now, as it relates, the expert today happens to be someone I'm looking forward to discussing her expertise. It's Sharon Francisco. She happens to be someone with over 30 years of experience helping business owners from various industries grow their businesses. Sharon begins with hands-on experience necessary to make significant impact in bookkeepers and their business. Now, as a coach and mentor to bookkeepers, Sharon's gained confidence in the industry when she teamed up with her business partner to build a black belt bookkeeping business, which they grew from one bookkeeper that is to 12. Now, Sharon and her partner developed a formula that worked to achieve these results, and now have developed a program called the Entrepreneurial Bookkeeper, where bookkeepers can duplicate this formula and grow their business to maximize their success. So, Sharon, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Roger. Nice intro. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Very deserving of it, in fact. So here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to begin with a little bit of a background so that my listeners can have an understanding of what got you into the accounting profession. What drew you into being this expert that you are working with bookkeepers?
Yeah, it wasn't kind of a planned strategy, really. I was working in corporate and a little bit sick of working in corporate. My sister-in-law had a bookkeeping business. And she said, why don't you come and help me build my bookkeeping business? I said, sure. I have no idea about bookkeeping, but let's try. And it was kind of just like that. It was a conversation over a coffee. And so I quit my corporate job and I started with her in her business. It was just her and a part-time bookkeeper. And this is something I didn't share very readily and easily for many years until I realized that I needed to share it. So I'm going to share it in this podcast. I'm careful to not overshare some private things about my life. But what I noticed is when I started sharing this bit of information, when I was one-on-one with people, they'd go, your story's my story, Sharon. Wow. So I think it's kind of important to share that 1 week after I started, it was like a big step for me to leave the corporate world. I had a really good job. 1 week after I started in that business with my sister-in-law, my 26-year marriage broke down. And it was a very amicable separation. It was, fine. Everything was fine. But for some reason, Roger, I went into the fetal position. It really, really rocked me. We were together I was 18, and I think a lot of people can relate to this story because when it happens, you just don't really understand the vulnerability of that. I was a 42-year-old woman. I had 2 teenage boys, and I was like, holy cow, this now has gone from, hey, this will be fun. Let's see how it goes. Never built a bookkeeping business before, but I'll give it a red hot go, to I'm a single mum now. I need to make this work. And what I did a lot with my corporate job was travel nationally and internationally. So, of course, I couldn't do that anymore. Being a single mum, my ex-husband was a fly-in, fly-out worker to mine. So he was away most of the time. So it was kind of sink or swim, Roger. I just felt really vulnerable in that space. And honestly, part of the strategies of me to build that business was to meet with accountants, and I'd literally pull up in the front of accounting firms and take off my glasses and wipe the tears out of my eyes and go in and present and then come out. And I say that because I want people to know that even at the lowest low you can be, I still had people refer me clients, which blew my mind. And I think it's funny because I think sometimes we feel we have to be really polished in the way that we present and to have all of our ducks in a row to build a business. Man, I was right on the edge of my comfort zone of everything, not knowing bookkeeping, not knowing that world, and then going through a very significant life-changing event. And I still got referrals through. I still was able to build that business. And ultimately, I built that I had 3 accountants and 9 bookkeepers working for me. So, yeah, I felt kind of in that process, I didn't have all my ducks in a row, Roger, and I think that's important because I think bookkeepers and accountants really like to have things right before they actually step into that. So I think I'm living proof that you don't have to be good at numbers, and you can be in the fetal position.
Honestly, I think we're all that way. We happen to be, all living in that little space where we may feel like we're a facade in some way or another. But I think your vulnerability, and good choice of words there, is the fact that so many of us are in that type of situation as we especially start and do something new. And many of my listeners, I do know, happen to have been in situations where starting a business or growing their business may not have been their primary focus, their initial first thing that they wanted to do, but it necessitated their attention and their devotion. And like your experience of a week after making this decision, your life more or less unraveling beneath you, I think a lot of people can relate to that, because life does throw curveballs at us, and we have to adapt, and we have to actually kind of pull up the bootstraps proverbially and try and do what we can to make the business work. So I think that initiative is something that everyone can relate to. Now, as it relates to your situation, you've got your sister, you're in a business that you're trying to grow, offering accounting services. You came out of the corporate world. What was the allure of, okay, I'm going to leave the security of the corporate world as it is and go and start my own business? It's an entrepreneurial process. What was the draw?
Well, we'd been in business together previously. So I grew up in a sheep and cattle station in the middle of nowhere in Australia without electricity or hot running water. So we had a business in the little town next to that property, and we loved it. It was really nice. It's lovely to connect with people. And, owning your own business is such a satisfying thing. The amount of work that you put in is what you generally get as results, especially if you're doing it in the right way. Sometimes it's a bit tricky when we can sort of work too hard and go too deep into it. But we'd been in business before, and we were successful in that business. So we thought, let's see if we can come together and grow a business. But, it was interesting because what added to the craziness of that first 18 months is that my brother got a job in West Africa, in Senegal, in that time. He was managing mines, and packed up the whole family, including my sister-in-law, who was the bookkeeper, and moved to West Africa. And the internet's really bad in West Africa, Roger. So it was just me. So I was building that business really by myself and not really having a first clue about what I was doing, to be honest. But yeah, it worked. And I've always had this philosophy that if somebody else can do it, so can I.
Yeah.
I just have this underlying belief that with, fitness and exercise and finding a life partner and anything, like, I think if somebody else has done it, so can I. So I kind of seek out people that have done that. And I did that with building the bookkeeping business. I just tried to find other bookkeepers that had built businesses and had a team under them and how they did that. So I guess, the template for me.
Well, that can-do attitude paid off, obviously, so that's really good. So let me tap into that a little bit, because I know many of my listeners happen to be women, and they are in their own right striving to be like you've accomplished. What do you say as you're working with coaching bookkeepers who are female, and they come with maybe challenges that you can relate to? Is there something unique about that experience, and what advice do you have for them?
I think in any business, it's really important to kind of have this belief that you can do it. And I think all of us suffer from the imposter syndrome. And I remember where it really shocked me with imposter syndrome, because I always think our little situation and what we believe about ourselves that's, not good or not capable or whatever, it's our dirty little secret that we don't tell everyone. But then when you start talking to people about their imposter syndrome, you think, oh, you've got it too. And then when you start opening up, I was working for a company that helped smart people be commercially smart. So PhDs, really clever women mostly. There were some men. And I remember part of my role was to mentor them, to help them grow their businesses. And I remember having conversations with this incredibly intelligent, incredibly successful women, and they had the same imposter syndrome things that I'd heard from other people. I'm like, wow, that's just amazing that it's not just me, it's not just people that are trying to grow businesses, or people from corporate backgrounds, or people from country backgrounds. I think we've all got it. So if that's the thing, if we've all got it, I think the goal then is to really put your finger in and wiggle it around and say, what is really going on there, and conquer it. Don't let it win. And I think if that's and I definitely what I've done over the years is try to pull in all the resources I can to help me get over that, to do the things that I need to do. And I think knowing, there's two of the most powerful words is me too. As soon as you hear somebody else going through something that you go through, you think, oh, it's a shared problem, and then just get on with it. Really, it's like, who do you need to pull into your world? I'm part of programs myself to help me do what I do. Where there's some of the 5 people we spend the most time with. And if you're hanging around with negative Nellies that think that, that there's not enough for everyone. So I have an abundance mentality personality. There's like enough work, there's enough everything for everyone. And if you're willing to do the work, I believe that anyone can achieve the success that they want to achieve.
I'm loving this because you started with the can-do attitude, and then you're obviously talking about the me too situation, which is to simply say that others out there can relate to our situations. We can learn from them, and then likewise from us. But then the other thing that you brought in is the abundance mentality. The fact that we don't have to have this scarcity mindset to believe that for me to be successful, I have to cause someone else to fail, that I'm taking from someone else in order to be successful. Those things are very contagious, but they're also very detrimental to someone's success when they start to feel as if there's this scarcity and I've got to go, I'll find something. The abundance mindset is much more liberating and encouraging. So I'm liking how you've brought those things up. To this, I'm going to add 2 things that I'd like maybe your input on. One of the common things that I find that I experience, and it does come up quite a bit with the women I work with, happens to be, first of all, when they're working with their initial clients, they oftentimes find themselves in a subservient role, which is to say that they struggle to be seen as a peer to the business owner. And because of that struggle to be seen or perceived as a peer, they find themselves oftentimes dealing with the situation that as a bookkeeper, as an accountant, they're being asked to come into the work environment and work from the office of the client rather than having the opportunity to work remotely. And it's them feeling as if this is something that they continually have to address, that no, I'm not an employee. You're not going to dictate the times or the days I'm coming into the office. I need the work. I'll take care of the work and it will get done. And it's them setting limitations or expectations, if you will, as to what that client relationship will actually be with. And so my first thing is the clarity of the letter of engagement. What is it that you're doing? And basically, how can you establish I am offering a service that you're paying for and I'm going to fulfill it. And in that relationship, I'm not subservient to you in the sense that I'm an employee or anything. I'm a peer to you and you're paying me for this expertise that I bring to the table. So that's the first thing that I find is very liberating for the individuals I work with, simply to say that clarity in the letter of engagement is the thing that can actually dictate that relationship moving forward. Would you add anything to that?
I'd love to add lots to that. I think there's this feeling that sometimes it's like, oh, there's not a lot of good clients out there, or we're in situations where we're dealing with those D-class clients and we're not happy with that. So I don't know if you know much about NLP, neuro-linguistic programming.
Yes.
There's a presupposition with NLP, and it goes, communication is the response you get, which means really what's happening to you. So your life, your business, your clients, whether you're working on site or off site, whether you've got A-class advocate clients, whether you've got D-class not such good clients, it's all because of us. And I think that's a big pill to swallow. But as soon as you sort of take that and embrace it, I think it's has the ability to change everything. So the way we position ourselves when we initially speak to people, and I think that I love to give the analogy when I separated with my husband in 2013, and as I said, I was quite shaken by that whole experience. But I got over that, and about 18 months later, I thought, you know what, I'm going to go and start dating, and I thought, this is going to be fun. I'm a friendly chick. It'll be great. So I got onto an app, and it was everything but fun, Roger. It was horrible. I found it, I was like a lamb to slaughter. I found it really overwhelming. And I thought, you know what? If I'm struggling and I'm a friendly, chatty chick, imagine what other people out there worrying about and struggling with that. And I know a lot of women have said to me, there's no good men out there, Sharon. It's, they're all taken, or there's no good men. And I just know that's not true. My dad was a good man. My brother's a good man. Damn, my ex-husband's a good man. Like, we just finished. We ended. It was fine. It was amicable. So I thought, you know what? This dating game is just a numbers game. I've just got to put more numbers in the top of the funnel. So like business, right? So I just thought of it through the business filter. So I thought, and then I thought, you know what? I need to find a really expensive app, because if guys are on expensive apps, they're serious. If they're on free or cheap apps, they're kind of maybe. That was my strategy. So I've got to fish in a better pond here, and I've got to do it strategically with more dates. So I Googled the most expensive dating app, and I found it and I registered for it. And lo and behold, I started, I thought, you know what, 5 dates a weekend. So I'll meet with 5 guys every weekend and have a coffee with them. Because I thought, I've just got to put more numbers in the top of my funnel to see what comes out the bottom. And it's really ironic, I was on those free dating. Oh, and I deleted Australian men. I didn't want to date Australian men. I wanted European men. So I made that part of the filter as well. So I got really specific on my niche, on who I wanted to target. Yeah. And then I wrote a list of all the things that I was looking for in a man. And it's really funny because I reached out to a guy a couple of times, a French guy a couple of times on the free apps. And it was crickets. Nothing came back. I'm like, okay. And then when I went on the expensive app, he was there again. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to give him one last go. And I reached out and he came straight back. And as it turns out, when we met face to face, I said, why didn't you respond to me on the free app? And he said, Sharon, I was overwhelmed with people connecting with me. I didn't even see you there. And he had the same strategy to move over to the more expensive app. Long story short, we're getting married in France in September this year. That was 10 years ago. So I think when you think about, I use that analogy because I think business is exactly the same way. Like, you can be fishing for a whole bunch of different clients, and we get D class, we get some A class, and we get some D class, but it's a bit of a spread because we're not really specific about what we need. And we may be fishing in the wrong ponds. So getting really specific about where you're going to attract your clients from. So when I built the bookkeeping business, I kind of did something very similar. I had this throwing mud analogy to see what sticks. And then I thought, you know what, Sharon, you need to be more strategic about this. So I started looking at companies that were one to many, so that they had the ability to send me more clients. So I developed this strategic alliance. It took me about 8 months to do that. And then they started sending clients through, say, 2 or 3 a month at around the 20 to 30 billable hours a month. And once that was established, it was, very fruitful for the business. And that's how I went to Black Belt, which is between 700 and $1 million turnover. So I think that kind of that strategy, being really specific about what you're after and what sort of clients you're after. And a lovely part of this story too is when we were talking to each other, when I met Pierre, and he said, so tell me about your family. And I told him about my family. And I said, my brother and sister-in-law are in Senegal, in West Africa. And he said, oh, really? And he was living in Australia at the time. And he said, my sister's in Senegal.
Oh, my heavens.
And we were on the phone. It was our first conversation on the phone. And I thought, you know what, he's full of shit. That's not true. And I said, so tell me about that. Where is she? And it turns out it was true. And she was teaching my brother's children in the international school in Senegal. Isn't that amazing?
That's incredible.
World, right?
Yeah, small world. But your illustration, I think, is very timely, because just as you were looking for that companionship, I think the same thing is true for the clients. And your analogy of becoming very intentional about your marketing is so true, because at the end, a business client is the same as a relationship with someone else, because it could have as long as a 10, 20-year relationship. The average lifetime expectancy of a bookkeeping client happens to be 7+ years. And so if you're looking at it from the standpoint of, I'm going to go find a quality relationship and I'm going to put some revenue and time into finding the ideal client, you're going to be a lot more intentional about what you're doing as efforts to find that client. And to your point, from a marketing point of view, you've got to find that right pond to fish in. So you're not wanting to necessarily go to the least expensive marketing strategies you can find. It's perhaps niching, as you've mentioned, in certain associations, organizations, spending the time and the money to join in, participate. There's costs there, and it's worth it because your cost per acquisition for your clients should be justifiable by the lifetime value of the client. And so that's the same type of relationship you're trying to foster with somebody that's important, like a companion in your life. So perfect analogy. I thought it was very, very relative, that you want to move away from the free things and get into something that actually has some cost and skin in the game, because then you're going to find quality individuals, quality clients. So this is perfect.
Get your copy of Red to Black. It is the book written for accounting professionals to help businesses turn around and go from being in the red to being in the black. This book is written for consultants, business owners, operators, and managers, no matter what your client's product or service, or irrespective of your talent, skill, or expertise. As an accounting professional, you'll be able to use the principles presented in this book to actually become, for your clients, the profit and growth expert. Every chapter is filled with principles and concepts that you can use immediately with your clients to lead them from being in the red to being more profitable in their business, and see you as, in fact, their guide, their coach, with the expertise and wisdom that you can bring from this book. In the book, you have how-to guide explanations, you have models that you can follow, you're shown how to actually calculate and determine the fees for your services, the actual model that you'll use during the implementation of all this, and most importantly, the end-all results with your clients. Get this book now and see what it is you can do to offer this new revenue-producing service as, in fact, the profit and growth expert. For more information on how you can take advantage of this offer, go to the episode description and there get the information you need to take advantage of this today.
There is something I want to backtrack on, because I mentioned that there were two things, and I'd be amiss if I didn't bring up the other thing that you were speaking of, which is imposter syndrome. I don't want to fixate on this because it is kind of what backwards in our conversation, but I think a lot of people bring this up as something that they struggle with as they're going out there to meet with business owners. Do I really have the means and the ability to service them and take care of them? And the thing I wanted to add to everything that you shared earlier happens to be the fact that you are enough. You have that skill and that ability to confidently hold your head up and service their needs as it relates to the services you're choosing to provide and offer. But what I wanted to do is use that as a transition to go into the idea of empowerment. I know you're big on the idea of empowerment, finding that self-confidence that we need to be successful business owners. What can you share about that?
I think this is one of the big, and it's for me, one of the biggest hurdles that I've had to get over coming, as I mentioned before, coming from the country and then moving to the city, and then obviously putting myself out there in a corporate environment and then growing a business. And I think, I think it's, everyone thinks that it's their own little unique secret, and that it's something that, unless I think you're willing to face it head on, it can be something that debilitates the growth of your business or the growth of you as a person. So I think it's really important to stare it down and see it for what it is. One of my favorite sayings is, it's what we say to ourselves about ourselves when we're by ourselves. And I think unless we're saying really encouraging and positive things about ourselves, because I think it can be a bit of a habit to kind of run this little program of negativity, and that we could have said that different, or we could have done this different, or whatever program we run. I mean, I do a lot of the work that I love Dr. Joe Dispenza. I don't know if you know much about Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he talks about our neural pathways and how they're kind of really, the reason why that negative thing that we think of and we play it over and over is like, the country girl keeps coming out of me, but when sheep or cattle walk to a watering place and there's like a path, do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So our neural pathways are exactly like that. And the reason sheep and cattle follow those is because it's a predictable path to water or food or whatever. So I think the same thing can be said for this neural pathway that we play in our head. And that can either be a positive or a negative thing that we're playing over and over. And because it's such a well-worn path, the darn thing is really hard to change because it's what we're used to. It's habitual that we go over and over. And I think somehow if we think about all the negative things, that kind of helps us stave it off or something. Or if it comes up, at least we've thought about it a million times so we know what to do with it. But in the process of doing that, we're kind of sabotaging our own success and abilities. I remember I did a program in 2017 called Women with Influence. It was a 12-month program with this amazing woman called Jane Anderson, and she was a personal branding expert. I remember she had all these very incredible women in the group, and I felt so out of place. I was like, you know what? I am not meant to be here, but I was. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me because she was talking about personal brand and that basically now, especially now when we've got, the ability to reach people globally, and whoever you are, you're going to be somebody's cup of tea and you're not going to be other people's cup of tea. And I remember she said to me, because I've spent my whole life, Roger, with people saying, "Shh, Sharon, you're too loud, you're too much." And so I've spent most of my life, especially in corporate, pushing down my energy. And for the first time I had her say to me, you get to be you, Sharon. And I'm like, oh no, you have no idea. I'm not going to be me because I just scare people away. And she said, no, you get to be you. And I was like, it was such an amazing revelation for me to be able to be me. And then I said to her, I remember I had this conversation with her. It's like, why is it so darn hard to be me? Like, why do I struggle with being comfortable in my own skin? And then that's what I thought, you know what? And I was talking with these other incredible women in the group and they were saying the same sort of things in a different way. I'm like, you know what? This seems to be something that specifically women seem to struggle with. It's like, you know what? Just learn and practice to be ourselves is really important. And that's where I've just gone on this whole journey since 2017, really, to, number one, help myself be authentically me and get that out to the world. And obviously they say that the key to happiness is helping other people. And definitely for me, my program and what I do to help women in finance, and that's my goal, to help as many women in finance be financially independent. And that came from me not feeling very financially independent in 2013. That was my biggest worry when I separated, was how am I going to feed my kids and make sure that I've got a nice house and keep my kids in a beautiful school. And that was my biggest worry. And I thought, you know what, if I can help other women build security for themselves, because when you learn how to grow a business, like what I did with the bookkeeping business, or learn a skill that's going to help you be financially independent, that doesn't go away, Roger. No one can take away what you've got in your head. So if you can really instill positivity, abundance mentality, and learn some strategies about how to grow wealth, and I think bookkeeping businesses and accounting businesses are the best vehicle to build wealth. Because yes, you have to be a good technician to begin with to start a business like that. But if you learn the skill of leadership, you can start bringing on other bookkeepers working for you like I did. So I'm not a bookkeeper or an accountant, but I learnt the skill of leadership to bring on bookkeepers to do the work to grow the business. And I reckon the key for bookkeepers and accountants is then they're good at what they do with the bookkeeping and accounting, but then the skill to learn on top of that is obviously sales and marketing and leadership.
Yeah, you've addressed quite a few good things in here, so let me unpack a few of them. One, with regards to empowerment, I have to agree with you. A lot of times what we do is we cause our own self-doubt. We are the most critical person. We may be the most critical person we're interacting with as we go to sleep at night, and we just cause all this reflection on what we could have done differently or better. And that's sad, because at the end of the day, if we're being that critical of ourselves, it really sabotages our self-conscious, our confidence. There's a lot of things that actually come from it that's very negative. So what I want to do is talk about that empowerment for a moment, to simply say, if we can change the wiring in our minds to be more gratitude oriented, to where we can be grateful for the things around us and acknowledge the things that are going on in our lives that are well, that we're blessed by, it does enable us to actually rewire the mind so that we can see opportunities. They stand out a lot more, and we're able to embrace them a lot more easily. So these are some of the things that I think are very important about empowerment. The other thing I'd like to bring up as it relates to what you were just describing is, you don't have to be a bookkeeper to grow a business, because you have to be a good leader, just like you were describing. And what I mean by that is, I have a number of clients that aren't accounting professionals yet run successful accounting businesses. And then in addition to that, I have bookkeepers that are very good at offering bookkeeping services that choose to then add tax services. Well, it wasn't necessitating them learning tax services. It was hiring a tax expert. And conversely, it's the same. I've got individuals that run very successful tax businesses, and it doesn't require them to go now and do the bookkeeping. They hire somebody to do the bookkeeping for their clients. They hire the accountant. It's basically treating it as a business and recognizing that it's not all about you. So great talking points. I like what you're sharing there. So one of the things that came from this is my reflection on how you try to emphasize how we should put ourselves first. Sometimes in all of this, the growth of the business, trying to be successful, we sometimes put ourselves second or even third. How is it that you emphasize putting yourself first?
I think this is a big sort of issue in our industry as well, because a lot of bookkeepers in Australia, especially, I'm not sure globally, but bookkeepers can tend to start off as like the part-time complement to the household budget.
Very common, yes.
Yeah, so it's it starts off like, you can drop the kids off at school and you can come home and do some work, or go into the office and then pick them up, and you've got the flexibility of going to assemblies and all of that kind of stuff. And I think what happens is, bookkeepers can tend to just like stay in that sort of way, and because it's generally a referral-based business, they keep getting referrals. And a lot of the things that I've noticed within our industry is the bookkeepers have a tricky time to say no. So if an accountant's kind enough to refer work through, bookkeepers all tend to just accept it and accept it and accept it and accept it, until then sometimes the work will go into the evenings, and then quite often then into the weekends. And what we notice here is, I'm working with a client at the moment. She hasn't had a holiday for 22 years, Roger, because the thing, and this is why I love working with bookkeepers, is because they're such nice people. They will put themselves out, as you said, second, third, fourth, they will put themselves out to help their clients, to do the right thing as mums and parents, as partners and wives. So they'll do everything for everyone else, despite of how they feel. And I think one of the reasons for that is obviously the feeling of not wanting a confrontational conversation, of saying no to the referrals essentially. But then also, I think all of us get a lot of our own self-worth through our work. And I think bookkeepers have an amazing relationship with their clients generally. So their clients give them a lot of feedback that they couldn't do this without them, and they really do go. So bookkeepers get that feeling of like, wow, I've really got to be there for my client, and they get that feedback that they're very important in their clients' lives, which is true. But that's kind of a tricky situation to get in, because then you're doing more and more and more, and then you go 22 years without a holiday. And that's not unusual. I've heard that time and time again. And even when bookkeepers are going on holidays, they're taking their laptops. So one of the things that I talk about is going on holidays without laptops. And we help set up their businesses so that they can go away without, without taking a laptop, and having a proper holiday. And that's like a very big emotional or psychological shift that people have to make to set their business up in such a way.
I'm loving how you brought up the personal time in this, and I'm going to hit on a few things here that I believe a lot of my listeners can relate to. Yes, you're right. Many of the people that in the bookkeeping world start their businesses as a supplemental income. They're doing it on weeknights, weekends, as you were describing. And one of the challenges that comes from that is oftentimes their first clients tend to be friends and family. It's the neighbor around the corner who kind of reach out saying, "Can you help me?" And so in this mindset of helping rather than I'm running a business, you start to take on these clients. And the first thing that I think a lot of them soon realize is it takes more time than they initially thought. And so what you thought was going to be a few hours a week or a month, all of a sudden turns into many more, and then you're overwhelmed. And the reason why is because you've overextended yourself, you've overcommitted yourself. And whether it's a supplemental position in the sense that you're doing it in complement to your, let's say, your day life, running the family, or your day job, doing something else, it is that point where you're now working late into the nights, you're working the weekends, you're skipping on holidays, you're not going to the assemblies, as you mentioned. And these sacrifices mean that you're putting the business first, your clients first, your spouse maybe second, your children second, you third. All of a sudden, you start to fall in the priorities, and 22 years go by and you haven't done anything for yourself. You've given up on hobbies, you're not exercising, you're perhaps self-medicating in one way or another, overindulging with food. It's just a vicious cycle. And what we need to do is, first and foremost, is recognize that this is normal and natural, but it's easily something that you can take control over again. And really not just take control of your life, but of your business, and not be consumed by working only in it, but now starting to work on it and ask yourself, what did I ultimately want out of this? Initially, it might have been favors, it might have been a hobby, but you're clearly running a business now. What would you like this to be a year from now? And now working towards that perfect vision. Not that you'll ultimately always obtain it, but you're at least moving closer towards it year after year after year. But the second thing I want to point out is that personal time, as you mentioned, we all need it. And one of the things that I can highly recommend is, like you were describing, is stepping away from the work, leaving your laptop behind, just being in the present and not being consumed by other distractions.
Learn the turnkey process for starting and building a successful accounting business. It's in this course that you'll actually experience 4 specific trainings. Part 1, your business plan, everything you need to know to get started. Part 2, how to price your services, the pros and cons of different methods and the best way to price your services that are both profitable and professional. Marketing and selling your services so that you can actually be top of mind, but more importantly, how to actually be seen as a trusted strategic advisor. And last of all, mapping it all out. 5 principles in running a profitable business so that you can be both competent and confident in the services you're providing. Learn now what it is you can be doing to start and build your own successful accounting, bookkeeping, or tax business. Go to the episode description and there get the information you need to take advantage of this today.
Wonderful insights. These are just beautiful. So I'm going to ask, what are you grateful for?
Oh gosh, I'm grateful for so many things. And I don't know. And I just wanted to add to that too, bookkeepers are doing all of this stuff for everyone else and sacrificing their own, health a lot of the times because they're working so hard and not making the time to go and exercise and nourish their bodies with, the correct food. And sadly, 50% of the time, it ends in divorce. Like, I know a lot of bookkeepers, their partners are like, come and spend some time with me. And because they're so busy doing the bookkeeping, they're not spending time with their partners. And, it's so sad that they can give for all those years. And then when relationships break down, you go, well, what's this all about? And I think what's helped me become grateful, Roger, is and it sounds a little bit cliche, but through the pain that I went through, I was able to turn that, and I did not know that at the time. I was just in pain when I went through my separation. I've turned that pain into be able to help bookkeepers hopefully either set themselves up that if something does happen with their health or relationships or whatever, they've got the ability to stand on their own 2 feet and not feel like a slave to their business. Or if they have gone through a tricky time with, health or relationships, how to establish that then for themselves. And I know this, it may or may not resonate, but you want to make decisions for life partners based on the relationship, not what's financially going to be a wise decision. And I know that sounds maybe a little bit controversial, but when you're not financial as a woman, the first thing you think of is like, well, how can I make this work for myself? You know, being a middle-aged woman and going into, you know, my older years where you don't feel as, you know, as attractive as you did in your 20s and things like that. So there's all these things that swim around. And wouldn't it be great to have a business where you're standing on your own 2 feet, you've got a team of people, you're making great money, and then you go out looking for a partner and you do it for all the right reasons rather than that undercurrent thing of feeling like, man, I want to make sure that I've got myself financially set up here. And it's just the most vulnerable feeling. It's horrible. But when you're feeling empowered and you've set your business up in a way that, you know, funds your lifestyle and you make choices based on just love by itself, it's kind of pretty powerful.
You know, I appreciate you bringing that up because that's something that a lot of people do experience. Once they find themselves in a certain sense of security, they make different decisions. You're not in that scarcity mindset that we were talking about earlier. So there's a time and season for all things is how I would like to point it out. So yes, you know, I'm going to wrap this up. We're come to the end here. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to point out a few quick highlights from the conversation that we've had. But before I do and move on, I'd like to point out for our listeners that in the episode description, I've got information regarding basically Sharon and her website. And if you'd like to find out more about her and what she does to actually service the bookkeeping community and work with individuals, especially women, to work on building their businesses, I'd encourage you to check it out and see what more she can perhaps answer or offer you as it's related to your business. In addition to that, one of the things that I want to have you do is in the episode description, find out more about the book called Your Strategic Accountant. This is an ebook that you want to actually get as it relates to your business. It's essentially addressing those things that you should be providing as services to your clients to, in fact, become for them their strategic accountant and that individual that they can rely upon as it relates to basically you're offering quality services. In addition to that, I want to encourage you to get the skills you need to offer these services as becoming a professional bookkeeper or a professional tax preparer as it relates to bookkeeping, accounting, and tax services. So go to the episode description and find out more about those things. Now, as a summary of our conversation, one of the things that I really appreciated is Sharon being vulnerable at the beginning and kind of highlighting her transition, that after just a week of a decision to kind of go into starting the business, she had that traumatic experience of now her relationship unraveling, and how that is, I think, something that many can relate to. It's just that unknowing of when we start our businesses, what those challenges we may face either personally or professionally along the way. And there's always those surprises. Life brings them, but it's having the fortitude to work through them and basically pull ourselves up and go into those conversations with potential clients and acquire the growth that we need as we're building our firms. The other thing I'd like to point out is she kind of highlighted a number of things that are related to just that personal mindset, the empowerment that we need as we're running our businesses, just recognizing that we are enough, that we have the skills and services to take care of our clients. And with that empowerment, come with an abundance mindset and realize that there's plenty out there to actually service and take care of and meet our financial needs, and more importantly, build the businesses that we're intending to build. And then with that, also recognizing that there are needs for us to put ourselves first. I thought that was a very important part that she emphasized, just allowing us to give the priority where it's due and not neglecting our own needs, and realizing that if we can't take care of ourselves, we're going to struggle to take care of those around us, whether it is personal or professional. So a lot of good highlights from our conversation today. Sharon, what is a final thought that you'd like to leave, though?
My thought is just believe in yourself. I think, and it sounds very cliche, but just and if there's anything stopping you, pull in the resources, read the books, podcasts, TED Talks, whatever you need to do to help build that belief. And it's an inside job. We've got to do that ourselves. And whatever tools, people, resources, it's what I build my business for. I pull in the resources that I need to help me go to the next stage. So whatever it takes.
That is beautiful. No, we all have to invest in ourselves, time and energy to listen to the podcast, which I hope everyone does here, read the books, associate with those people that are also empowering us to become better. So lots of good things that we can do that basically is a self-help focus. So that's very important. All right. So for my listeners, if you haven't already, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to the podcast. Obviously, this is a podcast that you need to hear as you're working on your business. Each and every week, we release episodes that are designed to actually give you those talking points, those things that you need to emphasize as you're working to grow your business, offer quality accounting services, and in fact, do so efficiently and profitably. So check out the podcast highlights highlights, as we've got basically playlists of past episodes where we have basically topical discussions that you can actually binge listen. It's in the podcast highlights that you can find those things that are relevant to your current situation. So go to universalaccounting.com, and there in the navigation, find the highlight sections of the podcast that you can tap into and find those that are most relevant to your current needs. In addition to that, I want to invite you to GrowCon. GrowCon is an annual conference. It's one for business owners of accounting, bookkeeping, and tax businesses. It's meant for you to actually come and join us each and every year to hear from the stage those experts as to what it is we should be doing in our business to work on our companies. In addition to this, you can also meet with your peers, those individuals that are likewise growing their businesses, working to build and offer quality accounting services. And with that, collaborate with them. Find those friendships, those connections and relationships you can use personally and professionally. And then likewise, you can also meet with the staff here at Universal Accounting. It's those individuals that are committed to helping you be in business for yourself, but not by yourself with Universal Accounting. So with all that being said, register now and join us for GrowCon, and we look forward to seeing you at that conference. Lastly, I want to point out that if you'd like more information regarding these principles and other subjects that we're discussing each and every week, feel free to give us a phone call. You can reach us at 801-265-3777 or visit us at universalaccountingschool.com. And always remember this, if it's about accounting, it is universal. Take care and be safe. Have a great day out there.